Imagine standing in your own master bathroom. Right. You're pressed against the cold glass of the shower, and you are just holding your breath.
Oh, man.
And 3 feet away, your spouse is scrubbing the floor tiles. Her hand is inching closer and closer to this one loose piece of grout.
Right.
And underneath that tile is a hidden passport and a stack of burner phones that will, completely destroy the life you've built together.
Yeah, it's over.
It's totally over. You want to scream. You want to reach out and grab her hand to stop her. But you can't move, and you can't make a single sound.
Because she's looking right through you.
Exactly. You are completely, terrifyingly invisible.
Which is just, it's the ultimate nightmare scenario, isn't it?
It really is.
You're physically present, but you are entirely erased from the reality of the person you love most. Like you're trapped in the same room, yet separated by this impenetrable wall of your own making.
Right. And welcome to the deep dive, by the way. We are so thrilled to have you with us today because we are exploring a story that traps you in that exact agonizing kind of tension.
Yeah, it's intense.
We're looking at a really comprehensive literary and commercial analysis of a novel called The Man Who Vanished. It's by the Arabic writer Ghassan Jawhar. And the mission for this deep dive is to figure out why this book is just shaking up the publishing world right now.
It really is making waves.
Because it's masquerading as this typical, airport read. But underneath the cover, it's this incredibly sophisticated blend of genres that just dissects the human condition.
Yeah, it operates on multiple levels simultaneously.
Right.
You get the visceral thrill of a survival story, obviously, but the mechanics of that survival force you to confront some deeply unsettling questions about morality and, isolation.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the premise of this book disguises itself as a fast-paced thriller, purely to sneak in these heavy, profound philosophical dilemmas.
Like a Trojan horse.
Exactly, a total Trojan horse. And to understand how Jawhar pulls off this trick, we first need to look at the central twist of the novel and how aggressively the author plays with your expectations of genre.
Right, because the setup relies entirely on manipulating the reader's assumptions.
Completely.
The narrative presents a specific kind of world, invites you to get comfortable with the rules of that world, and then, bam, it violently shatters them.
So we follow this protagonist named Gus, right? And the inciting incident of the entire plot is that Gus eats a fruit, and as a result, he becomes invisible.
Right.
Now, I have to push back a little here just as a reader. A magical fruit in a gritty techno thriller sounds completely absurd.
It does sound like a fairy tale.
Right. Doesn't that totally break the reader's suspension of disbelief? We're talking about a book targeted at fans of Dan Brown or Lee Child. You can't just hand Jack Reacher a magic apple and expect the audience to go along with it.
No, you can't. But that skepticism is entirely by design.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What's fascinating here is how Jawhar anticipates that exact reaction. You read the setup and assume you've accidentally picked up an urban fantasy.
Right, like something with wizards?
Exactly. But he uses that assumption to yank the rug out from under you. He doesn't just wave a magic wand and say, poof, he's invisible.
Okay.
He dives into speculative biology. The twist reveals that this quote-unquote magic fruit is actually a synthesis biological delivery system.
Wait, so it's not a mystical artifact at all. It's science.
Hard science.
Wow.
The fruit introduces a custom enzyme that temporarily alters the refractive index of human cells.
So it literally bends light around Gus's physical form.
Exactly. It is a biological precursor to quantum stealth technology developed by, a shadow faction of the military-industrial complex.
That completely recontextualizes the entire story.
It changes everything.
The moment you realize you're dealing with weaponized enzymes and light refraction, you are out of the fairy tale and dropped into a terrifyingly realistic, speculative sci-fi reality.
Yeah, we are dealing with high-stakes geopolitical intrigue at that point.
And that shift has to dictate the entire structure of the novel, right?
It does. To transition from the mystery of the fruit to the reality of weaponized quantum stealth, Jawhar employs what the analysis calls roller coaster pacing.
Roller coaster pacing.
Yeah, so he front-loads the mystery in the early chapters. You get the shock of the invisibility, the biological realization, the sheer panic of it all.
Right.
And then he plunges the reader into high-octane survival mode.
And the sources highlight some massive set pieces here, don't they?
Oh, huge.
There's this desperate, breathless chase sequence through the Egyptian desert, and then a massive, highly coordinated shootout in Corsica.
But here's the thing. If a thriller maintains that level of explosion and gunfire from page 1 to page 400, the reader just goes numb.
Yeah, you get adrenaline fatigue. The gunfire just becomes white noise after a while.
Exactly. Jawhar avoids this by pulling the emergency brake immediately after those massive peaks. He alternates the breathless survival sequences with slow burn, intensely introspective chapters.
Which eventually transition into like a slow burn political thriller for the finale.
Right. You get these quiet domestic scenes. You get internal philosophical monologues where Gus is just trying to process his new reality.
That breathing room is so vital.
It really is. It makes the sudden violence in the fast chapters feel incredibly shocking and earned rather than just, procedural.
But while the macro plot involves these sweeping international conspiracies and bleeding-edge quantum technology, I feel like the true genius of the book isn't in the global stakes.
No, not at all.
It's how incredibly grounded and sensory the moment-to-moment experience of invisibility actually is.
Yes. The author anchors the concept of invisibility in the most undeniable physical realities.
Jawhar leans so heavily into sensory language. When Gus is invisible, it's not simply a visual trick. It's a hyper-awareness of everything else in the environment.
It's almost overwhelming.
Right. He plunges the reader into a world of pure scent and texture. Like you can practically smell the heavy notes of oud and sandalwood and hibiscus.
Yeah, the descriptions are incredible.
You taste the sharp acidity of kushari and the earthy depth of malukia. You feel the raw physical grit of leather and cold stone against Gus's skin.
It's an overwhelming sensory overload, which, makes perfect sense when you consider the character's background before the inciting incident.
Because Gus was a perfumer.
Exactly.
That detail changes everything. It made me think of this analogy. It's almost like his heightened sense of smell becomes a form of echolocation.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Think about a bat navigating in complete darkness. Gus is navigating a world where he cannot be seen and where he feels completely disconnected from visual reality, so he uses scent as a language to map his surroundings and understand the people around him.
The echolocation comparison makes sense on a spatial level, sure, but what Gus is doing is far more invasive than that.
How do you mean?
Well, echolocation just tells you where a wall is, right?
Yeah.
Gus's heightened olfactory sense maps people's internal emotional states.
Oh.
Yeah, he can smell the sharp tang of adrenaline when someone is lying. He can smell the sourness of deep-seated fear or guilt.
That is wild.
He isn't just mapping the physical room, he's mapping the vulnerabilities of everyone around him.
And those sensory details fundamentally amplify the microtension of the novel. I mean, when you are hyper-aware of every single breath someone takes, every shift in the air, the threat of discovery becomes agonizing.
Which brings us back to that bathroom scene.
Yes. It is a masterclass in the ticking clock thriller mechanic.
It really is. Gus is standing there, invisible. His wife is moving around the bathroom, completely unaware of him, but she is inches away from uncovering that hidden passport concealed in the tiles.
And if she finds it, the illusion of their entire life is shattered.
Instantly.
And Gus is trapped. He can't reach out to stop her without revealing the fact that he is standing right there watching her. He can only smell the soap she's using, feel the cold tile radiating under his bare feet, and just wait for the bomb to go off.
The tension isn't about getting shot by a sniper, right? It's about the sheer, suffocating panic of domestic exposure.
Yeah.
That scene illustrates the core horror of the novel.
Mm-hmm.
The danger isn't just the geopolitical forces hunting him, it's psychological claustrophobia.
The fear of losing your own mind. The sources describe this profound isolation, the feeling of being, quote-unquote, seen by literally no one.
It's devastating.
It creates this deeply claustrophobic feeling even when Gus is standing out in a wide-open. You can be standing in the vast, empty expanse of the Egyptian desert under a massive sky and still feel completely trapped inside your own head.
Because if you are stripped of your reflection in the eyes of others, your sense of self begins to dissolve.
Right.
We rely on the acknowledgement of other people to confirm that we exist.
Yeah.
When no one can look you in the eye, when no one reacts to your presence, you're forced to look entirely inward.
And that internal isolation forces Gus to confront the darkness within himself. Which naturally brings us to the cast of characters, because they aren't just there to move the plot forward.
No, they act as psychological mirrors for Gus's fractured psyche.
Every key player in the novel reflects a different potential path for Gus. Let's start with his wife.
She represents absolute normalcy.
Yeah,
She is the emotional anchor, the baseline of humanity that Gus is desperately fighting to return to.
And her ignorance of his secret is what protects her.
Right.
Yes, but it also creates an agonizing, dramatic irony. She's grieving a man who is standing right next to her.
It's heartbreaking. And then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have a character known as the Guide.
The Guide is Gus's shadow self.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
He is the physical embodiment of what Gus could become if he completely abandons his morality. Because if you are invisible, the laws of society no longer apply to you.
You can do whatever you want.
Exactly. The Guide represents the terrifying freedom of letting that invisibility strip away your humanity entirely.
But the character that really stands out in the analysis is the main antagonist, Jacques, also known as Le Frisson.
Oh, Jacques is fascinating. Usually, in these high-stakes, bleeding-edge techno-thrillers, the villain is this cartoonish megalomaniac, right? Like a mad scientist with a grand theatrical plan for world domination.
He's petting a white cat.
Exactly. But Jacques isn't like that at all, and yet he's described as incredibly terrifying. What makes him so uniquely scary?
What makes Jacques terrifying is the absolute banality of his evil.
The banality of evil.
Yeah, he is the furthest thing from a cartoon villain.
Well,
he is a corporate predator.
Yeah.
He is a businessman who just happens to be running a massive, brutal drug ring.
Right.
His evil isn't passionate, and it isn't theatrical. It is coldly bureaucratic.
He runs a cartel like a Fortune 500 company.
Precisely. He views human lives purely as assets and liabilities on a ledger. If a person costs more than they earn, they are eliminated with the same emotional detachment as, like, cutting a department budget.
In a speculative world dealing with advanced quantum technology, a villain who operates with the cold, unfeeling logic of a CEO is far more chilling than a mad scientist screaming about world domination. Jacques represents the systemic, invisible cruelty of the real world.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because we have the normal wife, the shadow self, the corporate villain, but then there's Lisa.
Yes, Lisa.
And Lisa subverts one of the most classic literary tropes out there.
She completely dismantles the noir femme fatale archetype.
The femme fatale is usually just a seductress, right? A beautiful trap designed to tempt the hero into making a fatal mistake, purely to serve the plot.
Right, a walking plot device.
Exactly. But Lisa isn't just a plot device. She is a mirror reflecting Gus's own darkness back at him. She's a profound moral test.
The typical femme fatale leads the hero to his doom. Lisa, however, shares Gus's darkness, but she gets her own massive redemption arc in the final chapters.
Which is huge.
It adds an incredible layer of complexity. She forces Gus to realize that if she can confront her shadows and find a path toward redemption, he has no excuse for succumbing to his own.
She's doing the hard work.
Yes, she is a fully realized person wrestling with the exact same moral rot that is threatening to consume him.
And it's these incredibly complex character dynamics that elevate this novel far beyond a standard action adventure. The internal conflicts are treated with the exact same life-or-death gravity as those Corsican shootouts.
They absolutely are.
In fact, reviewers are actually placing this thriller in conversation with some seriously heavy-hitting literary classics.
The literary DNA of the novel is dense.
Oh, I bet.
The most obvious comparison is H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man.
Sure, the classic.
It's the classic predecessor for this entire trope. But Jawhar shifts the thematic focus entirely, where Wells focused heavily on the madness of isolation, how the physical state drives the character insane. Jawhar focuses on the morality of isolation.
Right.
It's not about losing your mind, it's about losing your soul.
There are also shades of Robert Ludlum's Bourne Identity in there, right? And Blake Crouch's Dark Matter.
Oh, definitely.
Those themes of fundamentally transformed men trying to survive while being hunted by their own fractured pasts. But the analysis digs even deeper than modern thrillers. It explicitly compares the weight and texture of Jawhar's prose to Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness.
And the connection to Conrad is really striking. Heart of Darkness is about a journey down a river into the physical interior of a continent, which mirrors a descent into the psychological interior of the human soul.
Yeah.
Jawhar mirrors this exact structure. Gus's physical journey through the harsh interiors of Egypt and Corsica is a direct parallel to his descent into his own moral darkness.
And the analysis even brings in Umberto Eco, specifically regarding how Jawhar treats the concept of smell.
Right.
Kiko wrote brilliantly about semiotics, the study of signs and symbols, and Jawhar basically blends historical Egyptology with the semiotics of perfume. He treats scent not just as a physical sensation, but as an intricate code to be deciphered, like a language of power and memory.
When you combine the visceral action of Ludlum with the psychological weight of Conrad and the intellectual puzzle-solving of Eco, you get a piece of work that naturally divides readers, but also commands immense respect.
You see that division perfectly in the editorial reviews from the source material.
Yeah, the reviews are very telling.
One reviewer gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, heavily praising the high-octane elements. They loved the relentless plot twists, the incredibly vivid depiction of the Egyptian landscape, and the chilling realism of Jacques as a corporate villain. They basically enjoyed it as a top-tier thriller.
But then another reviewer gave it a perfect 5 stars for entirely different reasons.
Right.
They called it a mirror for the soul. They argued that the novel's true triumph is that it prioritizes the mind over the muscle, using the thriller format merely as a vehicle for profound philosophical inquiry.
So what does this all mean? How does a single concept, a man turning invisible, satisfy the reader who wants breathless desert chases and the reader who wants a deep philosophical treatise?
It's a tough balancing act.
It is, but I think there's a perfect modern analogy for what Jawhar is exploring here. The invisibility in this book functions as the ultimate metaphor for digital anonymity on the internet today.
Oh, absolutely. The mechanics of invisibility and digital anonymity operate on the exact same psychological principle.
Think about it. The core question of the book is, what do we do when the consequences of our actions completely vanish?
Right.
When nobody can see us, when we have a shield of perfect, impenetrable anonymity, do we stay true to our morals? Or do we become trolls? Do we become monsters?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Jawhar is using a speculative sci-fi trope as a scalpel to dissect our most pressing modern anxiety.
He really is.
He is exploring the terrifying reality of privacy, the massive imbalances of power, and the total erosion of accountability.
Yeah.
He scales it from the global, untraceable quantum stealth weapons all the way down to the intimate devastation of keeping secrets from your spouse.
When you strip away the threat of being caught, what is actually left of your conscience? The fruit that Gus eats in the inciting incident isn't just a biological delivery system for stealth technology.
No, it's not.
It is the ultimate symbol of forbidden knowledge.
And once you possess that knowledge, you cannot unknow it. The transformation is permanent.
Which brings us to the resolution of the novel. Because Jawhar completely avoids the clean, easy, Hollywood happy ending. Yeah.
The ending is relentlessly realistic and incredibly bittersweet.
Yeah.
The hero, Gus, technically wins the physical conflict, but he is permanently scarred by what he has done to survive and the darkness he has witnessed.
And the villain is jailed. But the cold, bureaucratic, completely corrupt system that allowed a corporate predator like him to thrive remains completely intact. You cut off one head, but the ledger remains.
It is a thinking person's thriller. It refuses to insult your intelligence by tying a neat little bow on a story about systemic corruption and fundamental human darkness. The author demands that you sit with the discomfort of an unresolved world.
And that is exactly why we wanted to bring this deep dive to you today. Because it proves why it is so incredibly worth engaging with stories that actually challenge your own integrity, rather than just settling for mindless escapism.
Absolutely.
When you engage with a narrative like this, you aren't just passing the time on a flight, you are actively stress testing your own moral compass.
And the narrative leaves a permanent mark. The final verdict from our source material offers a brilliant synthesis of the entire experience.
Oh, let's hear it.
It suggests that the novel ultimately describes the birth of a new kind of human. A person who has journeyed deep into the interior, who has seen the absolute, uncompromising darkness of the world and of their own soul, and who makes a conscious choice to carry that darkness.
Wow.
They bear the weight of it so that others, the innocent people anchoring them to humanity, like Jana, don't have to.
It is an incredibly heavy burden to bear alone.
It is, and it leaves you with a deeply provocative question that feels urgent for all of us right now. In our modern age, a time defined by constant digital surveillance, relentless data tracking, and the constant exposure of secrets, we are all hyper-aware of the dark realities operating just beneath the surface of society.
We really are.
So we have to ask, is carrying the burden of that dark, forbidden knowledge a curse that isolates and ruins us? Or is it actually the ultimate act of love and protection for the people we care about?
Are we hiding in the dark because we are afraid, or are we standing in the dark so the people we love can stay in the light? Think about that the next time you think you are completely alone.